Most men think attention-seeking behavior is a woman being needy. They're wrong. And that single misread, that one quiet, almost invisible mistake in interpretation, is costing them the connection they actually want. Here's what's true. When a woman hasn't been intimate in a long time, and I don't just mean physically, I mean genuinely connected, genuinely seen, she doesn't become less expressive. She becomes more precise. Her signals get quieter on the surface and louder underneath. And if you don't know how to listen beneath the surface, you'll see her behavior and call it clingy, confusing, or just plain a lot. But a small number of men understand what's actually happening in those moments. And those men don't just get her attention, they get her trust. They become the person she keeps coming back to. Not because of tricks, not because of clever lies, but because they understood something that most men never bother to learn. Stay with me because what I'm about to share isn't from a dating coach's opinion or a list of tips you've already heard. This comes from behavioral psychology, attachment science, and a very honest look at what happens inside a woman's emotional world when she's been running on empty for too long. And somewhere in the middle of this video, I'm going to show you the one thing she's actually testing for without even knowing it, and why getting that wrong is the silent reason so many promising connections quietly fall apart. Let me be direct about what this video is and what it isn't. This is not about manipulation. It's not about playing games or positioning yourself strategically to take advantage of someone's vulnerability. If that's what you're here for, this video won't serve you. And honestly, those approaches don't work long term. Anyway, what this is about is understanding, real understanding. The kind where you walk away from this video and you're able to look at a woman's behavior and actually decode it, not as something being done to you, but as something being communicated through her because she doesn't yet feel safe enough to say it plainly. Because here's the psychological reality. A woman who hasn't been genuinely intimate emotionally, physically, or both for an extended period of time undergoes a very specific internal shift. Her nervous system is recalibrating. Her attachment system is on a kind of quiet high alert, and her behavior, the things she does around men she's drawn to, becomes a very precise, if unconscious language. Understanding that language doesn't make you manipulative, it makes you perceptive, and in the world of human connection, perception is the skill. By the end of this video, you'll understand 3 psychological triggers, 3 deep, consistent patterns of behavior that emerge from this specific emotional state. I'll know what they mean, why they happen, and how the way you respond to them either builds something real or quietly destroys it before it even starts. Let's talk about what most men do wrong because the mistake isn't obvious. It's not some glaring error, it's subtle, and that's what makes it so costly. When a woman who's been emotionally or physically starved of intimacy starts behaving differently around a man, she's drawn to most men respond in one of 2 ways. The first response, they overcorrect. They get excited. They interpret her signals as green lights and accelerate. More text, more pursuit, more intensity. And without realizing it, they've put pressure on a system that was just beginning to feel safe. She pulls back. He can't understand why. The energy that felt like it was building suddenly evaporates, and he's left confused, replaying conversations, trying to figure out what he said wrong. He didn't say anything wrong. He moved too fast into the space before she invited him in. The second response is almost the opposite. He sees her behavior, the testing, the proximity, the little moves she makes, and he misreads them as desperation or games. He pulls back to seem less interested, to protect himself, to not seem too eager, and what she was actually doing, reaching out carefully to see if he was emotionally safe, gets met with distance. She interprets his distance as disinterest. She closes the door. Both responses come from the same root error, reading her behavior on the surface level and responding to what it looks like instead of what it means. You're reading a language you were never taught, and so you're essentially responding to the punctuation while completely missing the sentence. The even deeper problem is this. Most of the advice out there tells men to focus on performance. Say this, do that, create this impression, and performance might get initial attention, but it can't hold because what a woman in this emotional state is actually scanning for is not performance, it's presence. She wants to know, is this person real? Is he steady? Can he handle the full weight of what I am without flinching? Performance answers none of those questions. In fact, it raises new ones. So before we go into the three triggers, I want you to understand the foundational premise of everything that follows. This isn't about doing anything to her. It's about being something that her nervous system recognizes as safe and magnetic at the same time. That combination, safety and magnetism, is rare, and it's what she's been waiting for. Three psychological triggers. Trigger 1, the presence test. She's not looking for attention, she's testing attunement. Here's the first thing you need to understand. When a woman who's been emotionally withdrawn or disconnected from intimacy starts seeking your attention, she's not doing it because she needs validation. She's not doing it because she needs validation. Doing it because she's assessing you. Psychologists call this attunement, the ability to read someone else's emotional state and respond in a way that feels accurate and resonant. For women especially, attunement is one of the earliest tests a man either passes or fails, usually without knowing he's being tested at all. What this looks like in behavior, she'll say something that's slightly below the surface, a casual observation, a joke with a layer underneath it, a comment about something she's been through, dropped lightly into conversation like it doesn't matter much. And then she waits, not consciously. She's not thinking, let me see if he picks up on that. It's instinctive. It's her system checking. Does he hear what I'm not saying? Most men hear the surface comment and respond to the surface. They laugh at the joke and move on. They acknowledge the observation literally. They don't follow the thread down to where it actually leads. And she files that away, not with judgment, just with data. He's present, but not perceptive. Safe enough, but not the one. The men who pass this test don't do anything dramatic. They just notice. They hold space for a bit longer than is comfortable. They ask the question that's one level deeper, not prying, just genuinely curious. When you say that, what do you actually mean? Or sometimes it's even simpler. Just a moment of real eye contact that says, I heard more than the words. Here's why this matters so much in this specific context. A woman who hasn't been genuinely connected in a long time has usually built a very effective emotional wall, not because she's damaged or difficult, but because she's learned. She's learned that being fully open is a risk. She's learned that most people hear without actually listening. So, she tests in layers. She offers a small piece and watches what you do with it. If you handle that small piece with care, the next layer opens and then the next. If you miss it, the wall quietly reveals and she'll tell herself it's fine. It wasn't meant to be, and she'll believe it because from her side, she gave you the key and you didn't recognize what it was. The practical takeaway here is this: slow down. When you're in conversation with her, resist the urge to fill every silence or redirect toward yourself. Let her words land. Respond to what's underneath, not just what's on top. This is what presence actually means. Not intensity, not constant engagement, but accurate perception in real time. That's what she's looking for, and almost no one gives it to her. Trigger 2, the proximity pattern. Her body knows before her mind decides. The second trigger is physical, but it's not what you think. When a woman who's been emotionally starved of intimacy becomes drawn to someone, one of the first things you'll notice if you know to look for it is a subtle shift in her physical behavior. She starts to manage proximity. She finds reasons to be near you. She creates small opportunities for contact that feel accidental but aren't. She touches your arm when she's making a point. She finds a reason to lean across you. She positions herself consistently within your physical field, just close enough to feel the pull, just far enough to maintain plausible deniability. This isn't manipulation, it's biology. Here's the psychological underpinning. Humans carry what some researchers call a personal space bubble, a comfort radius around our bodies that we allow specific people to enter. The interesting thing is that this bubble isn't just about safety, it's also about desire. When we're attracted to someone, we begin unconsciously shrinking that bubble. We allow them closer and we test their response. For a woman who's been emotionally or physically disconnected from intimacy for an extended period, that bubble has often become very defended. She's used to keeping people at a managed distance. The fact that she's allowing it to shrink around you, even in small deniable ways, is actually a significant signal. But here's where most men go wrong with this one. When they notice her physical proximity, they interpret it as a signal to escalate, to move into the space she's created, to match her energy with forward physical momentum. And sometimes that works, but often what it actually does is remove the tension she needs to feel drawn toward you. Desire is born in the space between two people, not in the collapse of it. What she's actually looking for when she manages proximity is a specific kind of response, warmth without urgency. She wants to feel your awareness of her without feeling pressure from it. She wants to know you notice that you're not oblivious, that you're not treating her like furniture, but that you're also not leaning in with a hunger she hasn't yet invited. The man who can hold that space with calm confidence creates something very specific in her nervous system: safety with electricity. She feels both drawn and at ease. That combination is extraordinarily rare for women, particularly women who have been emotionally or physically disconnected for a long time, because what they've often experienced is a binary: either men who feel safe but create no spark, or men who create a spark but feel fundamentally unsafe. The man who can hold both at once becomes almost irresistible to her, not because of a technique, because of who he actually is in that moment. So when you notice the proximity pattern when she's finding ways to be near you, creating small accidental contacts, the move is not to escalate. The move is to acknowledge without amplifying. Let her know you see her. Let her feel your warmth, but stay rooted in yourself. Don't lunge for the invitation. Let the space between you do the work. That space is not emptiness. That space is potential, and she can feel it. Trigger 3, the emotional risk signal. This is what she's actually asking you. Now we get to the third trigger, and I told you at the beginning there would be one insight that separates the men who really understand this from everyone else. This is it. When a woman who's been disconnected from intimacy for a long time finally starts allowing herself to feel something for someone, she will at some point, often when neither of you is expecting it, say or do something vulnerable, something that cost her something emotionally to share. It won't announce itself as vulnerability. It rarely does. It might come in the form of a story about her past, a quiet admission about something she's afraid of, a moment where she lets something slip that she then almost immediately tries to walk back or minimize. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you this. Pay very close attention to those moments, because what she has just done is offered you an emotional risk. She has stepped outside her protected zone and handed you something real. And what she's doing in that exact moment, consciously or not, is asking one specific question. Are you safe with the parts of me that are hard to carry? This is the test that matters most. This is the one that determines everything. And here's how most men fail it with the best intentions. They respond to her vulnerability with logic. They try to solve the problem she's described. They offer a reframe, a perspective, a reassurance that minimizes the weight of what she shared. You shouldn't feel that way. That wasn't your fault. You're too good for that anyway. Or they respond by mirroring vulnerability back immediately, reflexively, as a way to bond. That's so funny. Something similar happened to me, and suddenly the conversation has become about them. Neither response is wrong in a vacuum, but in this specific context, they both communicate the same thing. I am not comfortable sitting with the weight of what you just gave me. And she feels it not as a judgment, just as data. He's kind, but he can't hold this. And quietly, carefully, she begins to rebuild the wall. The response that changes everything is both simpler and harder than most men realize. You don't solve it. You don't immediately share your own story. You don't rush to make her feel better by minimizing what she felt. You hold it. You let what she said actually land. You let the silence sit for a moment without filling it. And then when you speak, you reflect it back with care, not with analysis, not with advice, with recognition. That sounds like it really stayed with you. I can understand why you'd carry that. Thank you for trusting me with that. That's it. That's the whole move. And I know it sounds small. I know it sounds almost too simple to be the key to something this important, but this is backed by decades of research in emotional attunement, attachment theory, and therapeutic communication. When someone is vulnerable and the other person responds with recognition instead of solution, the emotional bond that forms is categorically different from anything that can be created through charm, humor, or even physical attraction. It creates what attachment researchers call a secure base experience. The feeling that this person is someone I can be fully myself around without being managed, fixed, or minimized. For a woman who has been emotionally starved for an extended period, that experience is almost electric because it's what she's been missing. It's what no amount of surface level connection has given her. And the man who gives her that just once, just a single moment of real recognition becomes fundamentally different in her mind from every other man she's encountered. He becomes the one who actually sees me. And once a woman feels truly seen, not performed for, not impressed, not strategically pursued, but genuinely seen, her attraction operates from an entirely different place. It's no longer tentative. It's not hedged. It becomes something she actively wants to protect and nurture. That's the shift you're after. Not manufactured, not performed, earned through the one thing almost no one teaches, the ability to receive someone's vulnerability with quiet, grounded recognition. Let's bring this out of the theoretical and into the real world because I want this to be useful, not just intellectually interesting. You're talking with someone. You've noticed the signs we discussed. She's running the attunement test. You can feel it. She's managing proximity. Something in the conversation has given you a sense that she's been through a period of real emotional isolation. Here's what you do, and more importantly, what you don't do. You don't perform. The moment she senses that you've shifted into a role, the supportive guy, the emotionally intelligent man, the guy who gets it, she'll feel it and it will feel hollow. People who've been emotionally disconnected for a long time become extraordinarily sensitive to inauthenticity. Their calibration is sharper than average because they've had to rely on it. What you do instead is stay genuinely curious. Curiosity is not a technique, or it's a state of being. When you're actually curious about someone, not to gather information, not to find an angle, but because they're genuinely interesting to you, that comes through in a way that no amount of practice behavior can replicate. Ask questions you don't know the answer to, not interview-style questions, actual questions that come from something she said that made you want to know more. You mentioned that thing earlier. What was that actually like for you? And then listen, not to respond, just to hear. In terms of presence, put the phone away, not as a statement, just as a natural expression of the fact that she's more interesting to you than anything on a screen. That's it. That's simple. When she creates proximity, meet it with warmth, not urgency. Smile naturally. Make real eye contact, not intense, not prolonged beyond what's comfortable, just real. The kind of eye contact that says, I'm here, I see you, and I'm not in a hurry. When she says something vulnerable, resist the first impulse, which is almost always to solve or redirect. Breathe, let it land. Then say something that shows you heard the weight of it, not just the surface. You don't need to say much. Sometimes the most powerful response to a genuine disclosure is simply, I hear you said, slowly, with full presence. And in terms of your own emotional posture throughout all of this, stay grounded in yourself. Not distant, not guarded. Grounded. There's a difference. Grounded means your sense of self isn't contingent on how she's responding to you in any given moment. You're not scanning for approval. You're not recalibrating every few minutes based on her energy. You're just there, steady, real. That steadiness is magnetic in a way that almost nothing else is, especially for a woman who has been in an emotional environment that's been anything but steady. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She doesn't need you to say the right thing every time. She needs to feel that you're actually present, actually curious, and actually capable of handling her, all of her, without flinching. That's the whole game. That's all it is. If what I've shared today resonates with you, not because it's clever, but because somewhere in it you recognize something true, then you're already ahead of where most men are. Understanding this stuff, real understanding it, isn't something that happens in one video. It's a gradual recalibration, a slow shift in how you show up with people, not just romantically, but across all of your relationships. Because the principles we've talked about today, attunement, emotional safety, the ability to hold someone's vulnerability without rushing to manage it, these aren't pickup tactics. They're human connection skills. And if you want to keep going deeper, if you want to understand the full psychological landscape of attraction, desire, and emotional connection from a place that's grounded in real research and real self-awareness, then I'd encourage you to explore the other content on this channel. Not because I want to build a following, but because the work of becoming genuinely emotionally intelligent is one of the most worthwhile things a man can invest in. It changes how you show up everywhere in relationships, in friendships, in the way you understand yourself. And the first step is always the same. Get curious about other people. Yes, but first about yourself. What are your patterns? Where do you escalate when you should slow down? Where do you pull back when what's actually needed is presence? Where do you solve when what someone needs is simply to be heard? Those are the questions worth sitting with. Let me leave you with this. We live in a world that teaches attraction as a performance. Say these words create this impression, play this role, and some of that works briefly, superficially, in the way that any performance can hold a room for a moment. But what we're really talking about today is something different. We're talking about the kind of connection that doesn't need maintenance, because it's built on something real. The kind that doesn't require you to always say the right thing, because your presence itself has already communicated what matters most. When a woman hasn't been genuinely intimate for a long time, when she's been running on the emotional equivalent of empty, and she begins to reach out to test, to move closer in the quiet ways we've described today. She's not doing something irrational or confusing, she's doing something deeply human. She's asking without words whether you are the kind of man who can be trusted with the full weight of another person. Whether you can be present without being pushy, whether you can be warm without being overwhelming, whether you can hear the thing beneath the thing, the fear, the longing, the hope that's been sitting quietly under years of careful self-protection. And if you can do that, if you can show up with the attunement, the grounded warmth, and the capacity to simply hold what she gives you without rushing to fix it or possess it, you won't have to pursue her. She'll stop running, not because you did everything right, but because you made her feel something. She'd almost stop believing was possible, that she could be fully herself with someone, and that would be enough. That's the real foundation of attraction. That's what desire actually follows. Not a performance, not a strategy. A person who is genuinely, quietly, unshakably present. Be that person, not for her, for yourself first. And let what's supposed to find you, find you. If this landed for you today, if you found yourself nodding somewhere in the middle, or if it gave you something to think about, drop a comment below and tell me which of the 3 triggers resonated most. I read everything, and if you're not subscribed yet, take a moment to do that. Not because I need the numbers, but because the conversations we have on this channel are worth staying.